Have my baby already? He says, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Coming from someone I've long severed ties with, it's anything but pleasing. In fact, it's downright repulsive. And let's not forget, it was Ken who unilaterally filed for divorce. Now, he's acting all entitled, which is just too much. I stay silent, but Ken, misunderstanding my quietness, laughs out loud. You can't live without me, can you? I'm already remarried. What? Ken's voice turns incredulous, and I can't help but laugh. I never thought you were such a slut, he exclaims. But his words don't affect me in the slightest. I simply tell him, don't ever contact me again, and hang up without waiting for a response. Julie, what's wrong? Well, actually. I start to explain the phone call to Mark, who immediately offers to help. Turns out, he had received a call from another person as well and was planning to deal with both. Looking forward to the retribution against those two who hurt me, I begin to make some tea. My name is Julie. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. After divorcing my ex-husband 5 years ago, I remarried. Now, I'm a mother. My marriage to my ex was a nightmare, but now, I'm genuinely happy. Ken and I met at the reception desk of a trading company, where he was the one to make the first move. My parents, wanting their only daughter to marry for love, supported my relationship with Ken. Once we had their blessing, the engagement happened in no time. And we were married within a year of dating. Ken had a bit of a domineering streak, but he was generally kind, and our marriage was going well. However, 6 months into our marriage, Ken's attitude took a 180-degree turn. Hey, dinner. What? He'd demand out of the blue. Confused, I'd hesitate, recalling how just the day before, we'd discuss what to have for dinner or what we felt like eating. As I pondered what to say, Ken would grow impatient. I'm starving. Hurry up with the food. But I haven't even started cooking yet. Useless woman. Forget it. Where are you going? He'd snap and storm out, leaving me to stare at the door he slammed shut, wondering what I'd done wrong. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand. Ken wouldn't return until the next morning, heading straight for a shower and then locking himself in the bedroom. It was actually my birthday that day, and we had plans to go out for dinner, but I couldn't bring myself to remind him. Instead, I started on the housework. Hey. The vacuum cleaner's too loud. Are you trying to annoy me? No, it's just that since we're not going out, I thought I'd clean up. It's your fault we're not going out. I have a headache, just keep it down. I'm sorry. Looking back, it was clear Ken was in the wrong, but at the time, I blamed myself for upsetting him. And once he realized he could get away with it, Ken's behavior only got worse. This meal's terrible. Make it again. Huh. Got a problem with that? No problem. I'm sorry. Being criticized for every meal and every cleaning task, I grew exhausted. Yet, I loved Ken and believed he would become kind again. That's why I strained myself daily, doing housework. But that was a mistake. You're like a mannequin, so boring. Ken spat out one day before leaving the house. And upon returning, he triumphantly declared, I cheated on you. Why? Because you're not satisfied. Do you have a problem with that? But we're married. Ken's eyes widened in anger. You have a problem with what I do? It's not that, but. It's not but. Don't you even know how to respect your husband? Ken slammed his hand against the wall. His action made me shrink back, as he towered over me by at least 8 inches. Then, Ken suddenly spoke in a soothing tone. I don't want to do this. If only you'd try harder. Right, I'll try harder. That's right. A husband's affair is the wife's fault. Hearing this, I began to believe it was true and nodded. After that, Ken started lashing out at things whenever he was displeased, always soothing me with a gentle voice afterward. I'm doing this for you. Became his mantra, trapping me in a cycle of self-blame. One day, Ken brought home a young woman. This woman is pregnant with my child, so she'll live here from today. What do you mean? The woman answered smugly. It means since I'm pregnant with Ken's baby, you're no longer needed. I'm Anna, married to Ken now, and moving in today. Well. The sudden news of her moving in, pregnancy, and marriage overwhelmed me. I was confused. Ken and I were married. We hadn't divorced. Yet, why was this woman claiming to be married to Ken? Ken loudly explained. I'm tired of you, and I've filed for divorce. Anna helped me with it, so be thankful. Thankful? But what about the divorce? I don't care. Though, I might keep you as a maid. Ken smirked at his own joke. That's when I woke up to reality. No, thank you. I'll be leaving now. Going back to your parents? Make sure you admit it's your fault. No, I'll tell them everything, exactly as it happened. Hey, wait! Ignoring Ken's protests, I took my belongings and left. Arriving at my parents, they were shocked and asked for the full story. I told them everything, without hiding a detail. They listened to the end and joined me in my anger. My parents and I immediately sought the advice of my father's company lawyer. We demanded alimony from Ken. Of course, he refused, but with Ken having filed for divorce on his own and then remarried, not to mention a baby on the way, there was no way they could escape responsibility. Their payment was made in lump sums, which seemed to have put them in debt, but that's none of my concern. I started working again, on my own. Initially, I considered going back to being an office worker, but since I liked housekeeping, I started taking on housekeeping jobs privately, thanks to my parents' connections. Thanks to word of mouth, my client list grew from 1 or 2 people to having requests every day. One of my clients was Mark. He was a wealthy man who traveled the world alone, delivering supplies to children and teaching them. Because he was only home a few times a month, he gave me the keys to his house and asked me to clean it. At first, I refused, but after being repeatedly asked by someone who was referred to me through an acquaintance, I agreed to clean his house a few times a month. Eventually, Mark started asking me to clean while he was in the US. Mark, who prefers simplicity, turned out to have a lot in common with me, and we often had engaging conversations. After living this way for about 2 years, Mark said something I hadn't expected. Julie, I've fallen for you. Would you consider dating me with marriage in mind? What? Mark was handsome and smart, so I was sure there were better women out there for him. That's why I initially refused. However, Mark didn't give up and kept asking me out on dates. I still remember how happy he looked when I finally agreed to go out with him just once. Eventually, after several dates, Mark confessed his feelings again, and I agreed to start dating him. He quickly introduced me to his parents, openly stating that we were dating with the intention of getting married. My in-laws were very kind and didn't mind that I was divorced, treating me with great kindness. About a year into our relationship, we got remarried. And 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant with our first child. Our marriage has been very smooth, and I quit my job to focus on our home. Mark, who was already capable of doing housework, often helped out. Moreover, with a child on the way, Mark decided to stay here but wanted to continue his activities. He established an organization, became its representative, and launched a company that generates revenue here to support children overseas. The happiness of Julie and our unborn child is my top priority. Mark always says, treating my parents with great respect. Life with Ken was unimaginable compared to the peaceful days now, making me feel very happy every day. With the alimony payments from the 2 of them completed, I rarely thought about the past. However, one day, I received an anonymous call on my phone. Since Mark was away for work, I initially didn't answer, but the persistent ringing forced me to pick up. Hello? Julie? Who is this? It's me. Surely, you haven't forgotten, right? Hearing that voice made my spine freeze. No way. I couldn't understand why he would call now. Ken? That's right. Good job, Julie. Being praised like that didn't make me happy at all. I wanted to end the call quickly and urged him to get to the point. What do you want? You're being quite formal. Ken cheerfully shared his recent events, none of which had anything to do with me. This has nothing to do with me, right? Don't be like that, surely you've reflected by now? Reflected? I was genuinely confused and repeated the word. Just then, Mark came home. I gestured to him. And at the same time, Ken, still laughing on the other end of the phone, got to his main point. Yeah, if you've reflected, I'll consider taking you back. Taking me back? Have my baby already? Isn't exactly what you want to hear from someone you've cut ties with? It's not pleasant, it's creepy. And let's not forget, it was Ken who filed for divorce on his own accord. It's too late to be playing the good guy now. Silent at his words, Ken, misunderstanding my quiet, laughed loudly. You can't live without me, can you? I'm already remarried. What? Ken's voice was incredulous, and I couldn't help but laugh. I never thought you were such a slut. But his words didn't affect me. I simply told him, don't contact me ever again, and hung up without waiting for his reply. Julie, what happened? Well, actually, I started to tell Mark about the call, and he immediately said he'd handle it. Turns out, he had received a call from someone else as well and planned to deal with them together. As I made coffee, I looked forward to the retribution against those two who hurt me. A few days later, a lawyer visited our home. He had helped me during my divorce and now worked not only for my father's company but also for Mark's. I told him what happened, and he agreed to take care of it. While discussing this with Mark and the lawyer, my phone rang. I looked at them, placed my phone on the table, and answered the speaker. Julie. It was too sudden yesterday, and you got confused. But lying because you're mad isn't right. You haven't remarried, have you? I'm still here. His selfish interpretation made me sigh. Was I really in love with this man? Sensing how I felt, Mark responded with a wry smile. That's not a lie. I am Julie's current husband. Huh? What are you talking about? Julie, you should just report this delusional guy to the police. It's not a delusion. We are truly married. Our marriage is registered. Mark said calmly, which only irritated Ken more. I made it clear to Ken. What he's saying is true. I'm remarried. So, don't contact me again. Stop sulking. Are you saying that because someone told you to? No. If you want, our lawyer is here now, he can confirm it for you. The moment I mentioned the lawyer, Ken clicked his tongue over the phone. Then, with a frustrated voice, he ordered. Then divorce him and come back to me. I'll forgive you if you apologize properly. I'll come to pick you up tomorrow. Ken's inability to understand was headache-inducing. Then, the lawyer spoke up quietly. Ken, you do realize there's a restraining order against you approaching Julie, right? If you contact her, it'll cost you in damages. What? That's expired, isn't it? Absolutely not. It's still very much in effect. Finally, Ken's momentum was cut short by the lawyer's words. Yet, Ken tried to persuade me with a softer voice. Julie? You'd be happier with me. Is there really no chance? It's impossible. I have a child now. What? A child? Ken was silenced by shock. Mark then declared. I can make Julie happier than a self-centered, domineering man like you. We will not divorce, and she will never return to you. I nodded in agreement and held Mark's hand. Then, while Ken was still silent, I hung up. 2 weeks passed without a call from Ken, which made me think he had given up. But just when I felt relieved, our doorbell rang unexpectedly one day. Who could it be? Standing in front of the intercom, I was shocked. There were Ken and Anna, his affair partner, whom I heard had broken up but were apparently still connected. I pressed the record button on my smartphone and answered. You know there's a restraining order, right? If you're so rich, give back the alimony. Watching them after 5 years, I thought people really do change, but it seemed they were after money, showing up at our house. My wealth and returning your alimony don't relate. It's the same. How much money do you want? No, it's not like that. Despite their infidelity, they were brazenly demanding. Confused, I didn't know how to respond. Then, Anna started to spill the beans without any prompting. I got engaged. He's a supervisor at work, and he's a great guy. I can't tell him about my debt. You understand, right? Congratulations on your engagement. However, what does that have to do with the alimony? I was genuinely confused, but it seemed my question rubbed Anna the wrong way. Even through the intercom, it was clear she was starting to get angry. That's why. I'll forgive the debt part if you just return the money. You're not struggling for money, are you? I heard you're rich. Anna screamed hysterically, instilling fear in me. Though she couldn't enter due to the autolock, I worried about her breaking in through a window. As I pondered this, Anna screamed again. And how did you even manage to snag such a handsome guy? He suits me better, hand him over. I'm sorry, but my husband isn't an object to be passed around. I know that much. Anna interrupted immediately after my reply, and Ken, standing behind her, burst out laughing. It might have been funny, but it was rude. Anna then turned her anger towards Ken. I had no idea you were broke. Ken snapped back. You lied about being pregnant. That was a misunderstanding. Huh? You were so sure of yourself. They began to argue, forgetting I was there. Was the pregnancy a lie after all? I felt a thorn in my heart disappear. Just then, a police officer appeared on the intercom screen. It's not what it looks like. No, officer, it's just a small quarrel. They started making excuses. But the police officer wasn't buying it and took them away. I slumped down by the intercom. Thank goodness they didn't get in. Are you okay? It turned out Mark had called the police. Before answering the intercom, I had contacted Mark, who told me to record the conversation and that he'd be right back. Sorry for bothering you while you're busy, and thank you. Julie's safety is the top priority, don't worry about it. I felt grateful for Mark. Remarrying him was truly the best decision. I felt this from the bottom of my heart. The lawyer had informed the police about the restraining order, so Ken and Anna were thoroughly scolded. But then we started receiving daily calls from the lawyer about returning the money. It seems best to settle this matter once and for all. After receiving a call from the lawyer, Mark and I decided to face them head-on. When told we would meet through the lawyer, Anna and Ken happily agreed, probably thinking they'd get money. We prepared thoroughly and awaited the day of reckoning. On the day, my parents also came, having been informed in advance. When we arrived at the designated place, Anna and Ken were already there, and unbelievably, my former in-laws were there too. They glared at me as soon as they saw me. Thank you all for gathering here today. Let's begin the discussion. Everyone looked at me as I placed 2 pieces of paper on the table. They were invoices for breaching the restraining order. Ken and Anna's eyes widened at the amounts listed. No way! That's impossible! $60,000 each was written on the papers. They complained to me, flabbergasted by the amount. Then, my former mother-in-law spoke up. Julie, are you getting too carried away? What? I was puzzled. And the former mother-in-law laughed mockingly before starting to talk. I've already paid alimony. And yet, you're trying to extort more money. I thought wealthy people were more laid back, but you're quite petty, aren't you? Petty, you say? Essentially, she was suggesting that I drop the current charges. However, I had no intention of doing so. Indeed, I'm not struggling financially, but this is a penalty for not keeping their promise. They have an obligation to pay. I explained this to my former mother-in-law. But she was not convinced. After all, you were once a daughter-in-law, weren't you? To be so forward. I could never imagine doing such a thing," she said. Ken and Anna nodded in agreement with her. Their unanimous opinion made them surprisingly bold. I sighed and played the recording from the other day. The former mother-in-law blushed with embarrassment upon hearing it. Mark pointed it out. "Are you embarrassed? A man nearing 40 getting into trouble with the police outside his ex-wife's house. I would be too ashamed to show my face in public." The former mother-in-law glared at Mark but seemed too mortified to retort, grinding her teeth in frustration. I felt I had to say something. "Well, it's good that nothing was broken. If the statue had been damaged, that would have been a disaster. It cost about $1.6 million, after all." $1.6 million? The former mother-in-law turned pale at my words. Ken and Anna were gaping. That's when I realized I had never mentioned my parents' assets to Ken. My parents' total assets are around $580 million. So, it's not a big deal for us, but it would have been troublesome for Ken and Anna if it came to compensation. $580 million? No way! Why would I lie? Realizing the truth in my words, Ken slumped, his face drained of color. Anna, though, suddenly sparkled with interest and turned to Mark. "Then, Mark, you must be quite wealthy too, right?" "What?" Mark showed his disgust clearly, but Anna kept talking without hesitation. Indeed, Mark's total assets were similar to my parents. But that was irrelevant to the current discussion. "Why don't you ditch such a greedy wife and marry me instead? I'm pretty, and I'd look great in a dress." Anna was indeed young and beautiful, enviable even. But Mark looked at her coldly. "No matter how beautiful you are, I will never be swayed. To me, my wife is the most beautiful and precious person in the world." Being praised so directly made me a bit embarrassed. As I blushed, Anna glared at me with jealousy. Then I remembered something and mentioned it to Anna. "By the way, I met an acquaintance of Mark's the other day. It happened to be the president of Anna's company." "What did you say?" When he asked about Anna, I told him she was Ken's remarriage partner, but they divorced quickly. I said as Anna's eyes widened, and then she burst into tears. I was just being honest, but I felt I had to offer one more piece of advice. "Anna, I heard you've been unfaithful again. That's not good. Moreover, you should accurately disclose your marital history, or you won't be able to build a trustful relationship with your partner." "What have you done to me?" "I just told the truth," I responded with a smile. When Ken brought Anna, I was deeply hurt. This bit of revenge seemed quite mild in comparison. Just then, Mark's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he hung up and addressed Anna. "I just got a call from the president. He said your engagement with his son is off." "No!" Anna screamed and collapsed onto the table. While it was a pitiable sight, it didn't really concern me. "So, we'll be expecting your payment," I said, which brought the former mother-in-law to snap back at me. "Because of you, Ken is going to be in debt again. Don't you feel bad?" "Right. Don't you have any guilt?" I pondered for a moment. I was merely doing what was necessary. There wasn't much room for emotions in that. Then, I remembered something I hadn't mentioned yet. "Oh, right. Ken's company was bought out by my husband's company. He'll be going there for an audit report soon. Please take care." "No way!" I don't lie, do I? I looked to Mark for confirmation, and he nodded. Seeing this, Ken slumped, seemingly lost for words. However, the former mother-in-law didn't give up and tried to argue further. That's when the usually silent former father-in-law spoke up. "Julie, I'm truly sorry. Please allow me to apologize on behalf of these two." He started apologizing, which took me aback. During my marriage, he was the one who often criticized Ken's actions and the former mother-in-law's snide remarks. He even insisted on paying the alimony in full, even if it meant taking on debt. That's why I never harbored any ill feelings towards him. "Please don't apologize." "Let me apologize." The former mother-in-law looked at him as if seeing something unbelievable. I'll make sure they pay the alimony in full, even if it means taking on more debt. And I'm divorcing your mother. Divorce? Why? I can't stand your lack of common sense any longer. The former mother-in-law turned pale and clung to him. But his decision was firm, and realizing this, she became as despondent as Ken, unable to argue back. We'll just need your signatures for the payment, and then we're done here. Come on, you two, sign it already. Urged by the former father-in-law's shout, Ken and Anna reluctantly signed the payment agreement. My parents, Mark, and I verified the signatures before leaving. As we were about to leave the room, my parents, who had been silent, spoke up. Was irreconcilable differences the reason for your divorce? Indeed, our values are very different. So, we ask that you refrain from any further involvement with us. The daughter you hurt is now very happy. If you intend to disrupt this happiness, be prepared. Feeling the love from both of my parents, I was moved to tears. Mark, holding my hand, smiled at me. Leaving the aftermath to the former father-in-law, we left the scene. Later, the fine for the restraining order was duly paid. How they managed it was a mystery, but it didn't matter. Ken apparently lost his job after failing an audit. Allegedly, flirting with girls during work hours, slacking off, and just being incompetent were the reasons. Back when we were married, Ken seemed like he was competent at his job, but it turned out he just dumped all his work on his juniors, who eventually got promoted while he was sidelined. As soon as his performance reviews turned bad, he was the first to be offered an early retirement package. Ken accepted the early retirement, but the severance pay went to paying off his debts, and I heard through the grapevine that he's been looking for another job. However, almost no company in the same industry would hire him, and he's been making ends meet by working part-time at a store. Anna, after breaking off her engagement, faced more troubles as it came out she had another man, and she's being sued for alimony. Unable to make ends meet, she quit her job and is now working at a nightclub. I thought she'd continue using her looks to her advantage, but at 28, she's considered too old in the nightclub scene, hardly makes anything, and works a part-time job during the day. As much as I pity her as a woman, I also think she brought this upon herself. The former father-in-law really did go through with the divorce and even came to apologize to me. He wished me happiness, and I was able to express my gratitude. He's now back at his parents' home, dedicating himself to farming, and I hope he stays healthy for as long as possible. As for the former mother-in-law, after the divorce, she moved in with Ken, living off him since she's never worked a day in her life. The father-in-law mentioned that she's a big spender and there's constant yelling in the house every day. I recently gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Mark is completely smitten and takes care of her, allowing me to rest well. He even took paternity leave, so we've been able to manage childcare quite relaxedly during the day. We enjoy our time talking about this and that concerning our daughter, which has been truly blissful. My parents adore their first grandchild, bringing new toys every visit. To the point where we had to remodel a room into a toy room because of the sheer number of toys. Mark and I are looking forward to taking our daughter on an overseas trip once she's a bit older. I'm thrilled about our bright future, feeling incredibly blessed. Julie! It's almost time for feeding! Coming! I'll be right there! Today, Mark is taking care of everything except breastfeeding, so I've had some time to read. After enjoying some decaf tea, I stood up and headed to the living room. There, I found our daughter crying and Mark, despite being a bit flustered, looking blissfully happy. It was such a picture-perfect moment of happiness that I couldn't help but smile. What are you smiling about? Oh, nothing. With that, I took our daughter from Mark and began to breastfeed. I have a strange feeling that this happiness will last forever. It's a bright day outside. After feeding, we should all go for a walk. I shared this thought with Mark and smiled. Hey, the relatives are gonna gather at our place from 6 p.m. Expecting around 10 people, so heads up. One day. My husband suddenly announced this. What? Why all of a sudden? Does 6 p.m. mean they'll be having dinner here? Yeah, they'll eat here. They want to see your cooking skills. No way. We have triplets who are not even a year old yet. Despite this, my husband suddenly demanded a dinner for 10 people while we were already busy with childcare. I was perplexed and started to feel overwhelmed when he began to grumble, after all we've done for them, I can't believe how cold and ungrateful someone can be. I felt too drained to argue back and decided it would be easier just to do as told. I hurriedly finished shopping and started preparing the meal. Everyone would arrive in just 2 hours. I chose dishes that were quick to make and also looked good, and got to work. Once everything was ready, my husband said, "All right, you and the kids stay upstairs in the bedroom. Don't come down, no matter what." Why? I was surprised by his request and asked him. "If you guys are around, everyone will feel like they have to help with the kids. Just once, I want us to have a family gathering without worrying about the children." So, I followed his instructions. Despite it being so late, the noise from downstairs doesn't stop. Because of that, the kids had a hard time falling asleep. My husband's loud voice, in particular, echoed up to us. Irritated by his loudness, knowing we had children, I left the bedroom to go to the bathroom. That's when I ran into my husband's sister, Eleanor. "What? Olivia? Why are you here?" From Eleanor's reaction, it seemed she didn't know we were home. "Just wait, this is awful." "Wait!" I tried to stop her, but she stormed down the stairs with fury. Then, a few minutes later, a loud noise echoed through the living room. I'm currently 32 years old, Olivia. A working mom in the thick of parenting. I started living alone for the convenience of getting to college. Right after I moved out on my own, I met Liam through an acquaintance. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for travel. After dating for 2 years, he proposed, and we got engaged. Then, we went to greet my parents. Being an only child, my parents were a bit overprotective, to say the least. Not to toot my own horn, but my dad dotes on me. He's strict but kind, always indulging my whims. However, when it comes to my love life, that's a different story. The usually gentle dad would become stern. I was worried about how he would react to me getting married, fearing he might say, "I won't give my daughter away." Deep down, I felt anxious. But to my surprise, Dad, with tears in his eyes, said, "Olivia's getting married? I am so happy." "You must be happy, Liam. Please take good care of my daughter, Dad." I remember both my mom and I were moved to tears by his expression. Next, we headed to Liam's family home. I wasn't too worried since I had met Liam's relatives several times during our relationship. When we arrived at Liam's parents' place, we were greeted by Liam's uncle, his sister Eleanor and her kids, as well as Liam's aunt and her children. A lot of relatives were gathered, making for a lively atmosphere. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law, I look forward to being part of your family. Olivia, please take care of Liam. We're family now, so feel free to rely on us anytime," Liam's parents told me. Liam's family lives close to each other, and they all get along very well. Everyone's really kind, easygoing, and easy to talk to. I absolutely love my in-laws. Among them, I'm particularly close to Liam's sister, Eleanor. Eleanor, despite her trendy, almost glam appearance, is a working mom of 3, juggling her role as a nail technician. She's so popular that getting an appointment with her can be quite the challenge. She might come off as tough and straightforward, but she's earnest and treats me like her own sister. We've been going out together and chatting long before I got married, and Eleanor has been doing my nails every month. "Eleanor!" As soon as I spotted her, I rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Oh! Olivia! Congratulations on your wedding! I was so looking forward to you coming to the family home. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting even closer to you all." "Yes. Of course. I'm thrilled." That's how we celebrated, blessed by each other's families, and officially married. Later, we bought a condo centrally located to both our parents' homes, starting our new life together. Since both of us are working, let's share the household chores. Yes, that sounds good. Whoever gets home first can cook, and the other can do the dishes. We can both take turns with laundry and cleaning. Right. With that simple agreement, we set our domestic routine. Perhaps we should have detailed our chore distribution more, but too many rules could have made us both feel constrained. So, this level of flexibility seemed just right. Half a year into our blissful marriage. Ugh, I feel so sick. Olivia, you've been looking unwell lately. Are you okay? I've been feeling off for a while now. Initially, I thought it was just a cold, but 2 weeks passed, and I wasn't getting any better. When will this end? It's been dragging on. Huh? Now that I think about it. When was my last period? Oh. We looked at each other and froze for a few seconds. Then, we finally grasped the situation we were in. What? Pregnant? For real? Am I gonna be a dad? Well, we don't know for sure yet, but it's possible. I'm so happy. I'm incredibly happy, my husband said, his eyes sparkling with joy. The next day, we immediately went to a nearby OB/GYN. You're pregnant. Congratulations. The doctor's words made my heart leap. I'm going to be a mom. I'm so happy. However, the doctor seemed hesitant to continue. Was there something wrong with the baby? What? Is there something wrong with the baby? It's okay, right? I asked quickly, feeling anxious. The baby is fine, but you're having triplets. What? I was utterly speechless. It took quite some time to accept this as reality. Looking at the ultrasound, I could faintly see 3 babies. I felt overwhelmed with happiness at being blessed with children, but at the same time, crushed by the pressure and anxiety of suddenly becoming a mother to 3. Walking home with my head down, my husband, who had just returned from work, was waiting. Today was the day, right? The test. How did it go? Were you really pregnant? Yes. I'm pregnant. Awesome. Thank you. I'm so excited. But you seem a bit low, even though it's such happy news. Something up? It's triplets. Huh? My husband let out a pitiful sound. Then he was silent for a while, probably trying to process the situation in his head. What? No way? Really? My husband finally comprehended and exclaimed in shock. His reaction made my anxiety grow even stronger. What are we gonna do? We're suddenly becoming parents to 3? Tears welled up in my eyes. I wasn't sure if they were tears of joy or anxiety, but it was probably a mix of both. Seeing me start to cry, my husband quickly tried to reassure me. It's okay. It'll be okay. I'll help out, and so will Olivia's parents and my parents, and even our relatives. Everyone lives close by. We can rely on them to raise all 3 properly, right? He patted my back gently as he spoke. Yeah. Encouraged by my husband's words, I began to think more positively. Afterward, we went through a lot of tests and were told by the doctor that the triplets were growing without any problems so far. However, pregnancy was much harder than I imagined. The morning sickness was severe, and the fatigue was overwhelming. There were many things I couldn't eat, and my body felt heavy and cumbersome every day. By the time I reached full term, my belly had grown over 39 inches. It felt surreal that there were 3 lives inside me. The morning sickness was tough, but feeling the baby's movements made me grow increasingly fond of them, and I eagerly awaited the day I could meet them. After about 10 months, I gave birth via cesarean section. All 3 were born healthy and well, which was a huge relief. The triplets were all girls. All girls, huh? It's gonna be lively. Yes. There's a lot I'm anxious about, but right now, I'm more excited about everything. We looked at each other and smiled. We named the kids Maya, Mia, and Mila. About a week after giving birth, it was time for me to be discharged. On the day of my discharge, my in-laws came to pick us up. Olivia, congratulations on the birth. You did great. Take it easy and rest up. Really, being a mom to 3 is amazing. Well done. We'll all help out, so don't hesitate to ask us anytime. Thank you, father-in-law, mother-in-law, my husband, the triplets, and my in-laws. On the day of my discharge, we headed straight to my in-laws' house. Eleanor, my husband's sister, was there too. She came to celebrate the birth. Ah, how cute! Eleanor immediately rushed to the triplets, her eyes turning into hearts. Olivia, becoming a mom to 3 all of a sudden must be tough, right? My mom and I will help out with anything, she promised. Surrounded by so much celebration, we were at the peak of happiness. After that, the real challenge of parenting began for Liam and me. Liam couldn't take paternity leave, so I was mainly in charge of childcare. But it was harder than I could have ever imagined. Even if I managed to put all 3 to sleep, if one started crying, the other 2 would follow suit. Feeding milk to all 3 by myself felt like an endless task. I couldn't take my eyes off them for a second. Concerned about me, my mother-in-law, Eleanor, and my own mother started taking turns visiting my house to help out. The 3 of them quickly became close and got along well. Having everyone help with the triplets allowed me some rest, and just having someone to talk to or vent to eased my mind. Liam was initially diligent in helping with childcare, but gradually began to slack off. What's more, when the kids started crying in the middle of the night, he would say things like, "Damn, they're crying again. Hurry up and make them stop." Make them stop? Night crying is inevitable. There's nothing I can do about it. Even as I soothed the children, it seemed Liam was still frustrated. I'm working all day long. I have work early tomorrow too. Do something about it. I can't sleep with all this noise. I, too, am busy all day with childcare, running around. Tomorrow, I have to get up early to make Liam's lunch, prepare baby food, and feed and give milk to 3 people. I haven't had a good night's sleep in days either. You could help out a bit more. You're on parental leave, aren't you? Do you even know what that means? If not, look it up. With those sarcastic words and a click of his tongue, Liam went off to the living room. It seems he plans to sleep on the couch alone because the night crying is too loud. We've hit a major wall with childcare, and our relationship has started to strain. I had hoped that Liam would return to his kinder self after a while, but his attitude never changed. On the contrary, his neglect of childcare only worsened. On weekdays, he comes home claiming he's too tired from work, dives onto the couch, and waits for dinner to be served, saying, "I'm starving." I hoped he would at least help out on weekends, but he just lazes around, saying, "Let me relax on my day off." My patience has run thin, and I've often found myself yelling in frustration. I've lost count of how many times we've had arguments. Yet, my husband never seems to change, and I've come to realize that no matter what I say, it's useless. This day was no different. Coming home from work, he goes, "Hey, where's dinner? I'm feeling like stuffed cabbage today." This, while I'm in the middle of changing our kids' diapers. It's clear I can't just drop everything. How can he not see that? After staying silent for a while, even I couldn't help but snap, "Look at this scene. Can't you see I'm obviously busy?" To which my husband retorted, "Why are you so mad? I come home tired from work and I can't even relax." Inside, I sighed deeply. Here we go again. Another argument brewing. As much as I wanted to argue back, it felt like a waste of time. Every minute is precious when you're a mother. All right, I'll make it. Just wait. And so, I ended up making the stuffed cabbage he wanted. Even though making stuffed cabbage is quite the hassle, I diligently prepare it and serve it to my husband. Seeing his satisfied expression, he goes, "This is really it." Seeing my husband like that, I've resigned myself to thinking we have 3 little kids and 1 big kid in this house. Those days kept going on. The relationship with my husband stayed the same, not bad, but not exactly good either. We both tried our best not to fight. It's the expectations I have for him that frustrate me. I tell myself not to expect anything. Then, one Sunday, since he had the day off, he spent the morning lounging around, watching TV, and laughing loudly. Meanwhile, I was swamped with childcare and chores. Suddenly, he says, "Oh, right. Relatives are coming over at 6 p.m. today." What? It was already 4 p.m. Only 2 hours left. Why all of a sudden? Does that mean they're expecting dinner here at 6 p.m.? Yeah, they'll eat here. Uncle Joseph is coming today. Uncle Joseph is his dad's brother. He has a stern face and always takes charge of events in Liam's family, essentially the most influential member among them. If Uncle Joseph says we're gathering, everyone shows up, and apparently, he can be quite scary when angry. I've only met him at our wedding and when we announced our marriage. He does look a bit intimidating but is actually very kind and easy to talk to. However, since Uncle Joseph lives far away, we rarely get to see him, so today would be our first reunion in 2 years. How can you just spring on me that we're eating here? I can't just whip something up, especially with the kids around. Are you trying to skip out on chores again? I really need you to cook. Uncle Joseph wants to see how good your cooking is. There's no way I can do it today. We don't have enough time. Here's some money, let's just order takeout or meet up somewhere else. What? There's no way I can say that now. It's already been decided at our place. Uncle Joseph is already on his way. Just hurry up and get ready. After saying that, he plopped down on the sofa and started watching TV again. I can't believe how selfish he is. His attitude just leaves me utterly astonished. It's enough to make me want to cry out of frustration. And it's the same with the relatives. Why would they come over for dinner knowing we have small children? Before the kids were born, Liam's relatives used to come over often, but since I got pregnant, their visits have gradually decreased. Especially after giving birth, such gatherings have become rare. Liam complained that the relatives said, "It's a bother to go to a house with 3 young children," and even when he invited them, they all refused. No, first off, Liam shouldn't be the one inviting them. The triplets are only 10 months old and need constant attention. They must have been considerate in refusing before. Why on earth would these kind, considerate relatives decide to come today? It's puzzling. Ever since the kids were born, we've had visits from just the in-laws or Eleanor, but I never imagined we'd have as many as 10 people over. If it were my husband's friends or co-workers, I could have firmly said, "Absolutely not, please don't come." But with it being his family, it's not so simple. We've been greatly helped by them in the past, and I couldn't neglect them just because childcare is tough. As I was puzzling over what to do, my husband started grumbling, "After all they've done for us, how can you be so cold? I can't believe you." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore and felt it would be easier to just do as told. So, I reluctantly started planning the menu, thinking of dishes that look fancy but are easy to make. I thought about dishes that look fancy but are easy to make for a while and then said to my husband, "All right, I've got it. I'm going to go shopping now." However, I got no response from him. Of course, there was no chance he'd come along, and since he can't even take care of the triplets by himself, I had to take them with me to the supermarket in their stroller. My husband completely ignored us as we got ready. A sight I've sadly grown accustomed to. I hurried through the shopping and started cooking. Everyone would be arriving in 2 hours. I chose dishes that were quick to make but still looked presentable and got to work. After finishing the cooking, I had to bathe all 3 kids by myself. Which really takes time when you're on your own. Usually, I handle their baths alone, but today my husband helped a little, albeit grudgingly, saying, "Hurry up, what are you doing?" Normally, I'd be grateful for the help, but it felt like he only helped when he wanted to do something else, making me wonder, am I just being cynical? Am I just being cynical? Fortunately, the kids were all playing quietly together, so I was able to finish the cooking quickly. Once everything was ready, my husband said, "Now, you stay upstairs in the bedroom with the kids. Don't come down, no matter what." What? Why? Surprised by what I was told, I asked my husband. If we're around, won't everyone feel like they have to entertain the kids? I thought occasionally we'd want a family gathering without the children to have some conversation. But, weren't you the one who wanted to see my cooking skills? You can tell how good the cooking is even if you're not here. But won't everyone wonder why me and the kids aren't around? At least let me say hello. I bombarded my husband with questions, which he didn't take well. Annoyed, he said, "Stop nagging. No need for greetings. Everyone will just think you and the kids are sleeping. It's more hassle if you're around, got it? Just don't come out, okay?" I thought it was odd how desperate he seemed, but I let it go. It seemed too troublesome to probe further. I decided to follow my husband's instructions, just as he had said. As the appointed time approached, I stayed in the upstairs bedroom with the children as instructed. Soon, I heard Eleanor's voice greeting, "Good evening." I hid, wishing I could have seen her. Then, faintly, I heard my mother-in-law's voice from downstairs, "This is delicious." Her voice is a bit high-pitched and carries well. It seemed the dinner I made was well received. I didn't hear Uncle Joseph's voice, but was relieved for the moment. While thinking this, I looked at the clock and saw it was already past 10 p.m. Despite the late hour, the noise from downstairs showed no signs of stopping. Because of the noise, the kids had a hard time falling asleep. Especially with my husband's loud voice echoing up to the second floor. Despite being irritated by my husband making such a racket while the kids are here, I stepped out of the bedroom to go to the bathroom. That's when I ran into Eleanor by chance. Olivia? What are you doing here?" She was surprised to see me. Eleanor. Please, go ahead and enjoy yourself without worrying about me," I quickly said, hoping to ease any concern she might have. "But how can I not worry?" Eleanor seemed puzzled and at a loss for words. I had no idea why Eleanor was so shocked. Then she noticed the children playing in the back of the bedroom. Wait, the kids are here too? No way. It seemed Eleanor hadn't known that me and the children were at home. "Didn't Liam tell you we were here?" "Not at all," Eleanor denied in a hurry. Eleanor explained that she came upstairs because my mother-in-law was in the downstairs bathroom, and Liam had suggested using the one upstairs. Eleanor explained that Liam had invited them over because he said I was staying at my parents' house with the children and he was alone and bored. What? I couldn't believe Liam would say such a thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come in such a large group if we knew there were young children here. "Are you okay?" "I'm so sorry. Can the kids even sleep?" "Oh, no, it's totally fine." Of course, it wasn't fine at all, but I replied that way, puzzled by what my husband might have said. "Just wait, this is terrible. I'm going to talk to Liam." Wait." I tried to stop her, but Eleanor, looking furious, rushed down the stairs. I followed her with the children. "Liam." Eleanor grabbed Liam by the collar. "What?" "Eleanor, what's the rush?" Liam, caught off guard, glanced at me and the children. His face turning visibly upset. "What do you mean, what's up? Were you locking Olivia and the kids in the bedroom?" Upon hearing Eleanor's words, everyone turned their attention to us. "Olivia? And the kids too? Were you upstairs this whole time?" my father-in-law exclaimed in surprise. "Yes." My mother-in-law, sensing something, looked at the dinner on the table and hesitantly asked me, "Did you make this dinner too?" "Oh, yes." The faces of the relatives quickly turned pale. It appeared that everyone had been deceived by Liam just like Eleanor. The relatives all started expressing their regret, saying, "What an inconvenience we've caused. Olivia, why did you come out? I told you not to." "Well, if it's out, then it's out. She's been saying how tough childcare is and slacking off on the housework lately. She's always giving the kids formula instead of breastfeeding, and even though I've told her to make all the baby food from scratch, she uses store-bought. I have to make her cook for 10 people once in a while, or she'll completely stop moving." He said this, laughing. Liam spoke as if he was completely in the right about everything he had done. He doesn't understand at all. "I've been raising the children on a mix of breast milk and formula because my milk supply is low. Gone are the days when people said formula wasn't nutritious enough. It's not like that anymore. It seems only about 30% of mothers are able to exclusively breastfeed." Liam complains about the baby food being store-bought, "But I spend weekends preparing and freezing batches of homemade baby food. Isn't that what most mothers do? Sure, I occasionally use store-bought baby food when we're out or I'm too busy, but that's rare. I mostly make it myself." I've explained this to Liam multiple times, but he wouldn't listen. It seems I wasn't the only one disappointed by Liam's remarks. Eleanor said, "Everyone has their reasons for not exclusively breastfeeding. Besides, with 3 kids, just breastfeeding wouldn't be enough." The look Eleanor gave Liam was full of disdain. And it wasn't just Eleanor. Every parent there, including the women with children and the men who had been co-parenting with their wives, were appalled by Liam's comments, saying, "I can't believe it. Liam, you're a father, aren't you? Don't you realize that? The kids are still so young. What are you going to do if you're like this? Didn't you say you'd take proper care of the kids and Olivia?" The in-laws also started lecturing Liam. Immediately, voices suggested, "Let's call it a night, or we should at least help clean up." Yet, Liam showed no signs of remorse, sighing, "What's with everyone? Am I the bad guy here? Clearly, she's the one at fault. Great, you've killed the mood because of you." As he behaved this way, a figure who had been silent until now stood up from the sofa and walked silently towards Liam. "What's up, Uncle Joseph?" "Liam, brace yourself." "Huh?" Before Liam could brace himself, Uncle Joseph's slap landed squarely on him without a moment's delay. The sound echoed loudly in the living room. Wow, that must have hurt. I instinctively shut my eyes tight. "What are you doing?" Liam, tears welling up, held his reddened cheek. Everyone around was taken aback. "You idiot! You're the worst as both a father and a husband. I can't believe you turned out to be such a person. Ouch. Hurts? Olivia's pain is nothing compared to this." Uncle Joseph shouted at him. Ugh. Whether it was from the pain in his cheek or lack of words, Liam was speechless. Uncle Joseph had harshly said everything I hadn't been able to tell Liam myself, and I felt a sense of relief inside. In my mind, I smirked, "Serves you right." While everyone else was tidying up or soothing the children, Liam sat shrunken in a corner of the house. After being scolded by everyone and receiving a powerful slap, he was too dejected to stand up on his own. Uncle Joseph's slap and words seemed to have made a significant impact on him. 2 years have passed since then. The children have all turned 3. With 3 of them, there are fights and struggles over toys, and it costs a lot, but having helpers also multiplies by 3. I wonder if in another 10 years, I'll be discussing love stories or making Valentine's gifts with them. The thought excites me. Liam and I are still living our married life together. Of course, I've thought about divorce many times, but being on parental leave and having 3 kids, it's not easy to just divorce. Above all, after being severely scolded by all the relatives, Liam seems to have learned his lesson and now fully supports me in childcare and household chores. Hey, Olivia. What should we do next? Should I fold the laundry? He even started to take the initiative to help. Uncle Joseph's slap must have really made an impact. While I'm still working, and it's not like the one-parent operation is completely over, my parents, in-laws, and relatives continue to support us with childcare, so we're managing to raise triplets. Liam has many flaws, but he also has his kind moments. So, I've decided to give him a bit more time to grow, and we haven't ended up divorcing. Also, my relationship with Liam's relatives remains very good. Uncle Joseph even bought us a voucher for a one-night spa trip as a thank you, which he said I could use with my parents. When I told my mom, she suggested, why not invite Eleanor and Liam's parents and go together? She seems to have grown quite fond of Liam's family. We're not planning to use the voucher right away, but when we do go on a trip, the relatives have offered to take care of the kids, so I feel relieved to go on a family vacation. Additionally, Eleanor gave me a free nail salon voucher, and the in-laws sent a lot of meat, while other relatives sent lots of vegetables. Everyone truly seems to feel sorry about that day. Surrounded by kind relatives and my adorable daughters, I realize how happy I am. I hope these days continue. I'll just take the $20,000 gift money, and that's it. You are a stranger, so can leave. Don't ever show your face again. His face, as he said this so nonchalantly, looked downright devilish. It's astonishing how someone could string together such awful words. I got married 20 years ago. My husband, Benjamin, had his son from his ex-wife. I treated him like my true family, but it seems he felt differently. As the children grew, they became increasingly hostile. And then, at his wedding, there was no seat prepared for me. Confused, we were approached by him, brazenly demanding his gift money. Hey, where's my $20,000? Hand it over quick. After seeing his outstretched hand, Benjamin and I exchanged looks. All right, let's go. Yes, let's. We turned our backs and went home. Hey! What's this about? Ignoring his calls to stop, we just kept walking until his voice could no longer be heard. Once we were far enough away that his voice couldn't reach us anymore, Benjamin and I exchanged glances. He still doesn't know that what was supposed to be a joyful occasion, his wedding, was about to turn into a complete disaster. My name is Scarlett Johnson, 55 years old. I live with my husband Benjamin, who is 3 years my senior. We got married 20 years ago when I was 35. Our meeting was like something out of a story, fated. It all began when Benjamin happened to visit the cafe I frequented. At the time, I often had weekdays off and would visit that cafe every Wednesday morning. That day, as usual, I was sitting by the window, drinking a latte and reading a book. The cafe owner, remembering me as a regular, would always guide me to the same spot. Sorry, Scarlett, do you mind if someone shares the table? Despite it being a weekday, the cafe was a bit busier than usual, and the limited seating was all taken. Hence, he asked me, sitting alone with an empty seat opposite me, if I could share. The man who sat across was Benjamin, who would later become my husband. I continued my reading, barely noticing him, until I looked up to go to the restroom and was startled. Dark circles were prominent under his eyes. He looked utterly exhausted. Nearly lifeless. Are you okay? Even I, not the most outgoing person, felt compelled to ask. He must not have expected to be spoken to, because he startled and his body jerked. His hand hit the coffee cup, making a small clinking sound. Sorry to surprise you. You just seemed really tired. Oh, no, it's okay. With that, he looked away from me. Maybe he thought I was weird or got scared. I wondered if my presence made him uncomfortable, so I decided to leave early and quickly finished my drink. Sorry, but could you possibly spare a moment to talk? He asked, just as my latte was down to about 2 sips left, so I pulled away from the cup. He then told me his name, Benjamin, and about the situation he was in. Benjamin had lost his wife to illness a little while ago. Since then, he's been raising his son, Jack, on his own, struggling to balance work and apparently facing sleepless nights. Take good care of Jack, please. He promised with his wife, but today, he felt like zoning out, so he went to the cafe while his son was at school. I don't quite know how to say this, but I think you're a great dad, Benjamin. At this time, I was single. Naturally, I had no children of my own, so I couldn't say anything particularly insightful, but perhaps just talking it out seemed to brighten his face a bit. From then on, we often saw each other at the cafe. The same day of the week, around the same time. Benjamin would sit across from me, at my usual window seat. We talked about a lot of things. About his son Jack, who was 8 at the time, our jobs, and as we grew attracted to each other, we exchanged contact information and started seeing each other outside the cafe. Eventually, Benjamin confessed his feelings for me, and we started dating. After a few months of dating, we became a family. I had met Jack, his son from another marriage, a few times before we got married, but he never seemed to warm up to me. The first time we met, he hid completely behind Benjamin. After that, he didn't hide anymore, but he still wouldn't look me in the eyes. Whenever I tried to start a conversation, he would only nod or shake his head. He'll open up in time. Jack's always been shy around new people. Trusting his words, we decided to patiently wait for a chance to get closer. However, we would later realize how naive that hope was. Jack never got closer to me. He lost his real mom when he was just a kid, so maybe he hasn't sorted out his feelings yet. To him, I might just be some stranger who suddenly showed up. I didn't expect him to call me mom, but I was hoping we could gradually become closer. However, as he grew up, he started to become more and more aggressive towards me. When he was young, he barely reacted when I spoke to him, but as he got into middle and high school, he even started to hurl insults. Hey, lady! Didn't I tell you not to clean my room without asking? Why do you always have to meddle? Of course, I wasn't doing chores to be thanked, but instead of any gratitude, I was met with yelling, which left me feeling utterly frustrated. It's just his teenage years, he'll calm down in a few years. I kept telling myself that, trying to just get through it. Hey, Jack. Why are you acting like this? Benjamin did try to scold Jack for his behavior, but it didn't improve. Maybe because Benjamin is his biological parent, I've never seen Jack lash out at him. I hoped that once Jack got to college, he'd mature a bit and settle down, but that was far from what happened. Ugh, I get so annoyed when that old lady talks to me. He would often mutter, smirking deliberately. It wasn't as bad as being yelled at, so maybe this was an improvement. I convinced myself to ignore it, pretending not to hear. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was better this way, feeling my heart were down, but somehow managed to raise Jack until he graduated from college, and he became a working adult. Then, he started living on his own. He seems to contact Benjamin from time to time, but I haven't received anything. There's a slight sadness in not being acknowledged as family, but I was relieved not to have to hear his snide remarks anymore. Then, one day, while Benjamin and I were at home, Jack brought a woman home without any prior notice to either of us. There was no prior notice to either Benjamin or me. Suddenly, we heard the lock turn and froze, wondering if a burglar had entered. But then Jack popped his head in, and we let out the breath we didn't realize we were holding. He had left with a key to the house but hardly ever came back, so his sudden visit was unexpected. I'm getting married. What? When Jack stepped into the living room, a charming woman followed him in. You really surprised us. Why didn't you give us a heads up? My bad. While they were having this conversation, I went ahead and prepared tea for 4, setting it on the dining table. Then I took a seat next to Benjamin, facing Jack and the woman. The woman, Mila, is 28 years old, the same age as Jack. I don't really like coffee. Don't you have any black tea? Oh, I'm sorry. She peered into her mug and stretched out her voice in disappointment. Surprised by such a remark from someone I was meeting for the first time, my eyes widened. Well, it was also my fault for not asking about their preferences. Convincing myself of this, I took Mila's cup away. Hey, I prefer black tea too. Hearing this from Jack, I decided to brew some for him as well. As I turned my back to them to make the tea, I caught a snicker that sounded rather spiteful. "I thought you were some live-in old lady," Jack mentioned, "like a housekeeper or something. But you're slow and don't seem like you can do chores at all." A live-in old lady? I couldn't believe that was how I was perceived. Even if not as a mother, I thought I was recognized as Benjamin's spouse. The realization was deeply saddening, and all I could do was bite my lip to endure it. I nearly teared up but focused on making the tea to keep myself composed. "Here you go, sorry for the wait." As if I hadn't heard their earlier comment, I placed the cups in front of them and sat down at the dining table. Afterwards, there were no more insults thrown in my face, and the conversation shifted to Jack and Mila. They met at work, joining the company in the same year and spending a lot of time together in the same department, which eventually led to mutual attraction. Occasionally, they would glance at me mid-conversation, then look at each other and snicker. Wondering if they were plotting something unpleasant, I stared into my cup, avoiding their gaze. In the end, they left after only informing us of their marriage plans without discussing any details. Later, Benjamin received a follow-up call, and it seems they've set a date for the wedding. And then, a little while later, the day of their wedding arrived. Dressed in formal attire I seldom wear, I felt my posture straighten. The venue was very grand. Pure white walls, a large wooden door adorned with decorations, stained glass embedded. The landscaping within the premises was meticulously pruned. We headed straight for the reception. Upon giving our names, the receptionist gave us a puzzled look. Seeing this, Benjamin and I wondered if there was something amiss. I had expected us to be smoothly guided to our seats, but that was far from the case. In fact, the receptionist began calling over another staff member nearby. As Benjamin and I exchanged glances, wondering what was going on, the receptionist awkwardly avoided eye contact and said, "There is a seat for Mr. Benjamin Johnson, but there isn't one for Mrs. Scarlett Johnson." "What? What do you mean?" Despite nothing being wrong on our end, the receptionist bowed apologetically. Your name wasn't on the guest list to begin with." "That can't be." Could it be that the two main characters of today had orchestrated this? Other guests waiting in line at the reception were watching us, wondering what was going on. We decided to step aside for a moment to let others check in. "What's going on? Why isn't Scarlett's name on the list?" As Benjamin murmured this, a figure approached us. It was Jack, looking utterly pleased with himself. "Hey Jack, what's this all about? My name was the only one missing. Was it some kind of mistake?" "Huh? No way. Of course, I did it." I had asked, hoping against hope, but was bluntly denied. "Why would you do such a thing?" "Why? Because there's no point in inviting someone who's not related by blood, right? I don't consider you my mom, after all." "That's..." So, all this time since the remarriage, he had thought of me that way. Although I had vaguely known, hearing it from him directly made my heart ache. "Mila also said we shouldn't bother inviting that old lady." But of course, Dad, you're welcome to attend." Benjamin's brow furrowed deeply. Unaware of the impact of his words, Jack continued to chatter away. "Right, did you bring the wedding gift?" he said, extending his hand towards me. "Put it here," he must be implying. "I'll just take the $20,000 gift money. You old lady, like a stranger, can leave that and get out. Never show your face again." His face, as he said this so nonchalantly, seemed downright demonic. It's astonishing how he could string together such awful things. Being called a stranger, my heart went completely cold. Memories started to flow through my mind unbidden. Trying to talk to a young Jack, getting glared at when I attended a school event, him turning away and not making eye contact at all. All my efforts to get along felt utterly in vain. "Hey, where's the $20,000? Hand it over quick." After seeing his outstretched hand, Benjamin and I exchanged looks. "All right, let's go." "Yes, let's." We turned our backs on Jack and walked towards the exit.
What? Hey, the gift money. And why is Dad leaving too?
We turned our backs on Jack and walked towards the exit. Jack came rushing from behind, caught up with us and circled around in our direction.
Hey! What's this about? What do you mean what? We don't have $20,000 to give you, so we're leaving.
As I said this calmly, he glanced at Benjamin as if looking for help.
Why are you leaving too? You said that someone not related by blood should leave, that's why.
After saying just that, we started walking again. We could hear him calling out from behind, but we never looked back and went straight home. It turns out the wedding was a disaster. There was nobody from the groom's side at the venue, no relatives or colleagues. In fact, Benjamin had asked the family to attend conditionally. Jack had always had a poor relationship with relatives, always taking a bad attitude even on the rare occasions they met. He'd snatch games from younger cousins to play with. He'd call older relatives disrespectful names like old lady and old man. And yet, he would greedily beg for holiday money. Not just Benjamin, but the entire family had warned him, but to no avail. They, like me, had hoped he would settle down as he grew up. However, that hope was thoroughly dashed. Jack, even as a high school or college student, lost the trust of his relatives completely. They hadn't wanted to attend the wedding but had agreed to do so for me and Benjamin's sake. We were aware that Jack and his circle might be plotting something. They could speak ill of me right in front of me. It was unlikely they'd let me attend the ceremony normally. Mila, likely sharing a similar mindset with Jack, must have conspired with him. Anticipating this, we had already spoken to everyone beforehand.
If anything happens, you don't have to stay at the ceremony. We'll leave, so feel free to go as well.
The relatives all nodded firmly. And it wasn't just the relatives who had agreed to attend conditionally. The company colleagues were the same. In fact, Benjamin is the CEO of his own company. Jack had struggled with job hunting in college, failing to receive any job offers. Seeing this, Benjamin had pulled some strings to get him a position in a subsidiary of his company.
Dad, thank you so much. I'll work hard not to disgrace you,
he had said, completely forgetting those words as his work attitude was poor. He frequently arrived late, left early under the pretense of illness, and fell asleep during work, among other issues. His performance was the worst in the department. Initially, Benjamin had covered Jack's rent for the apartment he lived in after graduating from college.
Cancel the apartment lease and come back home. That should reduce your tardiness,
he often said, but each time, Jack would show a semblance of remorse. Yet, a week later, the cycle of tardiness would repeat. Once Jack started paying his own rent as work stabilized, the pleas to return home were ignored. Benjamin often made phone calls at home to the subsidiary company about Jack. The topic, of course, was about Jack.
I'm really sorry for the trouble. I keep hoping he'll improve as he gets used to the job,
he'd say before ending the call, often followed by a deep sigh that I frequently witnessed. He'd change as he grew up. He'd change as he got accustomed. Those hopes were consistently crushed. Indeed, Jack's work attitude never improved. He also lost trust among company colleagues. When Benjamin set conditions, the relatives and colleagues nodded in agreement. Thus, the wedding venue, with empty seats for family and company associates, had an almost hellish atmosphere. Mila's acquaintances were supposed to attend, but given her personality, she didn't have many friends. The attempt to liven up the ceremony with the few attendees tired out towards the end, resulting in sparse applause. Without close friends to rely on, the self-made wedding video played to a silent room. The sparse attendance was all the more noticeable in the large venue. Mila's parents were disappointed, saying, "To think he's so unpopular that guests would leave. It's shameful." Returning home, Benjamin, out of his suit, sat wearily on the sofa. Whether he was contemplating about Jack, he closed his eyes and pressed a hand to his forehead. I decided to change out of my formal attire into something more comfortable.
If strangers should leave, then what about company people or Mila's acquaintances? They'd all be unable to attend.
I whisper this jokingly, but no matter what I say now, I can't undo that wedding. The formal wear we had carefully prepared ended up being taken off shortly after. I wondered when there would be another occasion to wear it as I hung it up on the hanger. Following that, Jack's calls didn't cease for a while. Initially, they were only directed at Benjamin, but soon after realizing he wouldn't answer, Jack started calling me too. It was the first time Jack had ever called me. Reluctantly answering due to his persistence, I could hear his voice trembling with tears over the phone.
Dad, please don't abandon me. I'll apologize for that day. You should be apologizing to Scarlett, not just for now but for everything you've done to her over the years.
Benjamin responded before hanging up, only for the calls to resume shortly after. With a resigned tone, Benjamin revealed a truth to Jack.
Actually, I've never said this, but you and I are also strangers, not related by blood. What? What do you mean?
Yes, Jack was actually the child of Benjamin's ex-wife. Because Benjamin had married his ex-wife when Jack was too young to understand, Jack had thought they were biologically related. However, they were legally strangers. The word stranger Jack had used at the wedding, intended only for me, ironically applied to Benjamin as well.
If you look down on strangers that much, then I guess I'm included in that too. No, I mean, I didn't know about Dad.
Despite his excuses, no apologies came forth.
I'm sorry, but I have to cut ties. We're strangers, after all.
Perhaps stunned by the formally distant you, Jack said nothing. While he remained silent, Benjamin ended the call and then reached out to someone at the subsidiary.
Hello? Yes, about Jack. I think it's time to let him go.
The person at the subsidiary, who had long been exasperated by Jack's work attitude, readily agreed to this. Thus, having lost both his family and his job, Jack seems to be spending his days in deep regret and reflection. By the way, he hasn't divorced Mila, but they often argue, especially when reminiscing about the wedding. I am living a peaceful life with Benjamin. For our next day off, we've promised to visit the cafe where we first met, sharing smiles at the thought. Please stop. Don't come in, I said, trying to block her, but she retorted, ever heard of living within your means? It's a waste for just two of you to live here. We'll be moving in from today. If you don't want to live with us, then you're the one who should leave. Oh, but you'll still be paying. We're going through a tough time right now. Families need to help each other out, right? My mother-in-law, patting my shoulder, I gave nothing but a disdainful look. I'm Sally, 28 years old. I've always loved studying and learning new things. I managed to get into a well-known prep school in my hometown, and I was living a happy life until a snowy day in my last year of high school when a car slip on the snow took both of my parents away from me. Handling my parents' funeral and dealing with things I didn't understand, the insurance money was barely left after all the procedures were done on my behalf. With no relatives, I was suggested to go into a facility, but learning I could only stay there for about 3 years, I looked for a place where I could work and live in. The options were limited for someone who only finished high school. Still, I was hired to work at one of the few inns that offered room and board. First, I was strictly taught the basics, like how to serve customers. The seniors and the landlady were strict yet kind to me, who knew nothing. The owner's daughter also grew fond of me, and we spent time like a family. By the time 10 years had passed, I had become quite good at my job, and I had saved a considerable amount of money. I have a dream. To make it come true, I've worked hard. I received praise from the landlady for my tea-making skills and was entrusted with the task of making tea at the inn's annual tea enjoyment gathering. The region where our inn is located is famous for its Amirian-grown tea, so this event was held as part of community contribution efforts, involving nearby tea farms and specialty tea shops. I met my future husband, Kent, at this event, specifically at the segment where the inn decides on its tea suppliers. I made tea for a nervous Kent, marking our first encounter. Kent, the heir to a long-established tea plantation, was participating in this event for the first time that day. I was drawn to his gentle demeanor and soft-spoken nature, and after dating for a year, we decided to get married. However, getting married was not straightforward. I was prepared for the possibility of straightforward opposition. Given my background, I thought it might be inevitable to face resistance from a traditional tea family. I could at least figure that out. Yet, the reality was far more malicious than I had imagined.
You look exactly like someone who didn't finish high school.
Opening the door and locking eyes with her, the first words my sister-in-law spat out. I was so startled that I dropped my bag, causing my neatly aligned shoes to scatter slightly.
Hey! What are you saying, sis?
Kent retorted, but this was just the beginning.
So, you're a high school dropout with no parents.
She said, her tone devoid of any compassion or consolation, just cold and mocking.
Our family might not boast, but everyone has graduated from respectable universities, you know? I'm not keen on introducing high school dropout blood into our family.
I couldn't believe I was being spoken to this way. I looked at Kent, but he didn't seem ready to speak up.
You probably don't even know the proper way to do things like cooking or laundry without parents, right?
I wonder our family might be too much for a high school dropout like you. I could hear a sneering laugh from my sister-in-law sitting on the sofa behind me. After a series of insults, when the room finally quieted down, Kent spoke up before I could retort. Please, Dad, Mom, stop it. Sure, she's a high school dropout and not incredibly beautiful because she's older, but she knows about American-grown team from working as an inn waitress, and although she's not the best cook, she can manage household chores well enough. I've already explained where she works, haven't I? The inn's owner likes her a lot, and Sally is essential for our future business. I've explained this, haven't I? Saying this, he grasped my hand, mouthing it's okay to reassure me. At that moment, I felt a sense of discomfort. It almost sounded as if Kent was marrying me because I was favored by the inn's owner. After enduring such heartless insults from my in-laws, perhaps I was numb to the point where I fell into the illusion that Kent was rescuing me, that together we could make it work. I wanted our marriage to be formally recognized, but Kent suggested that if the inn's owner, who was like a parent to me, called his family, that would suffice. So, I asked the owner to call Kent's home on our behalf. It seemed his parents were easily swayed by influential figures. Right after the owner made the call, we received permission to marry. I remember being surprised by their quick change of heart. At this time, my best friend Amy expressed her concern about whether it was truly okay for me to get married.
I know how hard you've worked all these years. I think of you as a sister, and I just want you to be happy.
Amy, who had always been close to me, was the same age as Kent. The image of Kent I spoke about and the Kent Amy knew didn't seem to match, and she was always worried I might be getting deceived. For a while after getting married, Kent and I lived harmoniously. He would say the food I made was delicious, and we thanked each other, sharing warm moments together. I thought Amy's worries were unfounded. While continuing my work at the inn, I occasionally helped out at the family's tea shop, living a content life. Then, my mother-in-law fell down the stairs and fractured a bone. Given our initial greeting and subsequent interactions, I had kept my distance from my in-laws as much as possible. Considering my sister-in-law was also living with them, I didn't take the situation too seriously. However, Kent said something unbelievable. Mom fractured her bone, right? This is a good opportunity, so we've decided to move in with them. This was abruptly brought up by Kent one day after he returned from work. We had never discussed such a thing before. I'm troubled by this sudden decision. We have to consider our lease renewal, and I have my job, plus your sister lives there. I can help out by visiting, but... As I was proposing alternatives with a confused mind, suddenly a loud noise made me tense up. It was the sound of Kent slamming the table. What? I'm the eldest son, you know? Are you planning to leave everything to others and do nothing? Facing a Kent who seemed like a completely different person from the gentle and calm one I knew, I was totally stunned. But that's not. It's not different, is it?
I took in an orphan like you, and we got married despite opposition, so shouldn't you at least try to be useful, work a bit? I'm not just trying to please them, but maybe your high school dropout brain doesn't get it, huh?
Faced with Kent's uncharacteristic demeanor, I was speechless. He seemed almost thuggish. I must have been trembling. Then, Kent hugged me gently, as he usually would. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a moment of happiness, but at that time, all I felt was fear. I'm sorry for being harsh, okay? Sally, you're a bit silly, so I got irritated. It's your fault, you know? But if you listen to what I say, everything will be okay. You must be feeling anxious, so let's just do this until Mom gets better, he said, as if he was making a concession, trying to reach out to me gently. Little by little, I began to be consumed by his words. And so, I went to help out, at least to some extent. I thought that being in a position to be thanked might improve our relationship. By the end of the month, I had managed to finish packing and administrative tasks while working, and we moved. On the day we moved into my in-laws' house, the words spoken to me by my mother-in-law in her room were enough to break my spirit. Don't think that just because you came to help, you'll be thanked and your status will change. You're the high school dropout bride who brings shame to our family, the lowest in this household. Naturally, you'll be the last to use the bath. I was frozen in place, unable to move. Sweat chilled my back, and breathing became a struggle. This breathing grew more difficult with each day spent at my in-laws' house. While I could breathe normally at work, at home, I struggled to breathe properly, feeling suffocated. Eventually, I couldn't even manage a proper smile, and my mistakes at work increased. Amy was worried about me, but because I had insisted on getting married despite her concerns, I felt too guilty to admit anything was wrong, only managing to say I was fine. However, the stress led to sleepless nights and a worsening of my health. Not wanting to be a burden, I quit my job, citing the need to care for my mother-in-law as the reason. I should have properly said goodbye, but by that time, I lacked the energy even to leave the house. And so began my days of enduring insults while managing household chores.
How many times do I need to tell you? The food is too salty. Do you want to make us sick? You can't even cook a decent meal no matter how much time passes. I thought it was tasty because I got used to it. If it had continued like that, would I have been killed? Sally, you're lucky to learn cooking from Mom. The cleaning is always lacking somewhere. What was the point of marrying an olden waitress if it meant nothing? Kent's verbal abuse gradually worsened, and now, the gentle words he once offered seemed like a lie. What was supposed to be a temporary living arrangement showed no signs of ending. Today, as always, my mother-in-law cheerfully left for her hula dance hobby. Kent began to describe me as a frugal old lady who became even more sinister and gloomy, making the house suffocating to be in, and he started going out drinking, not returning home. One day, saying, "I won't be coming home tonight," he left the house dressed more beautifully than usual, with flashy makeup. My sister-in-law is about to turn 31. Lately, she's been active in her search for a marriage partner, often making snide remarks that I only got married because her brother lost his mind, or that it was good to have a free housekeeper, but recently she's been in a better mood, perhaps because she met someone nice, and the insults from her have lessened. With no one coming home, I managed to take a bath earlier than usual. Without Kent and my sister-in-law around. The bath was cleaner than when I usually take my turn as the fifth person, and I soaked in leisurely. Suddenly, the bathroom door banged open, and, startled, I looked back to see my sister-in-law standing there. I instantly understood that her date must have ended in disaster. "Hurry up and get out, you slowpoke," she said, dragging me out of the tub, and unbelievably, she pushed me out of the washroom naked, throwing my clothes at my face. My father-in-law was also in the house. I realized the danger, but it was already too late. Hearing the commotion, my father-in-law had somehow ended up standing behind me. After looking me over, he said, "I thought I was about to see a good scene,
but our useless daughter-in-law is just a skinny old hag, nothing exciting about that. No wonder Kent doesn't want to stay home. Mixed with embarrassment, frustration, and a whirlwind of other emotions, I rushed into my room. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself for a moment. Due to the busyness and stress, I hadn't been eating well recently. I was aware of that, but the person reflected back at me was skeletal thin, with dry hair and a lifeless expression. Staring at myself in the mirror, filled with frustration and anguish, I cried silently for the first time since arriving at my in-laws. I must have cried for about an hour before Kent returned home. "Wow, thought you were a ghost." "A weepy old hag ghost, that's new," he said, laughing at what I told him about earlier. "Seriously? That's hilarious. Even Dad made fun of you," he said, laughing it off. It was a moment something snapped inside me. Why was I putting up with these people? What were these past few years all about? Watching my husband continue to laugh, I swore to myself that I would get my revenge. And then, as if by fate, I received a call from Amy. Having not gone out much recently, I decided to wear a dress since I was too thin for my pants to fit anymore. It was a dress Kent had given me as a gift. The moment Amy saw me, she burst into tears and hugged me. "I should have visited even if you would have hated it," she said, expressing regret and words of comfort. Amy had reserved a private room for us, stating she had something important to discuss. The information she shared was astonishing, but for me, who had recently vowed revenge, it felt like I had just been handed a weapon. I shared everything with Amy, what had been happening, the recent incidents, and what I planned to do next. Amy listened, crying, and at the end, she said, "I'll help you in any way I can, and there are plenty of others who will stand by you. We'll get your happiness back," showing the mischievous grin she's had since we were kids. I couldn't help but laugh, realizing it had been so long since I'd genuinely smiled. The joy of being able to laugh made me cry again. Returning home, I went about my usual chores. My mother-in-law criticized me as always, but it didn't affect me anymore. I told Kent I needed to talk to him. He seemed incredibly annoyed, but I confronted him with photos. He was visibly shaken but started talking, perhaps thinking he could talk his way out of it.
"I met her while out drinking with friends, and we just had a bit of fun. Plus, with a wife who's a high school dropout, clumsy, older, and can't even manage household chores properly, let alone smile, it's been tough being at home."
As if it was all my fault, he had the nerve to speak so smoothly. "So, it's my fault then?"
"Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, I had no choice."
Relieved by my words, he responded. "Right. Then let's get a divorce. I'll have to explain everything to the inn's owner, who was like a parent to me, and apologize. They even acted as our go-between. Make sure you pay the alimony properly. I'll also divide the assets and claim alimony from your partner," I said, looking at him as if he were seeing a different creature, to which he retorted, acting all high and mighty just because I was submissive, and he hit me. Raising his hand must have made Kent realize he had gone too far. "I recorded that, you know. Look, I'm at my limit. If you don't want a divorce, let's at least end this cohabitation. I'll leave the day after tomorrow, on Saturday." The tea shop's business was mostly related to the inn, thanks to the owner who was concerned about me and had increased transactions. So, Kent had no escape. I had said I would leave in advance to prevent any interference with ending the cohabitation, and had packed my belongings. On the day, I had Kent inform his family that I was leaving then. They all sat at the breakfast table as usual, expecting breakfast to be ready. Seeing all three of them asking in unison, "Where's breakfast?" made me burst into laughter. I want to end this cohabitation. We only had breakfast because Sally made it, we should have been more grateful. As they all started hurling insults, Kent slammed the table and shouted, "Anyway, I want to separate. If we don't, things will get worse. Everyone, take care of your own needs. Sally, let's go," pulling me by the hand. For a moment, I wished he had taken such decisive action sooner. Shaking off his hand, I said, "We probably won't see each other again. The useless woman is leaving. Goodbye," and stepped ahead of Kent to leave. We stayed at a hotel for a while. A few days later, Kent didn't return to the hotel where we were staying. After waiting a day, I checked the company's bank account and found that all the money had been withdrawn, indicating Kent had fled. Seeing the balance at zero, I couldn't hide my shaking hands and the turmoil inside me. Months had passed since then, and I had returned to work at the inn. The money I had saved for my dream was still untouched. With that money, I bought a small house. It was a prefabricated house that caught my eye the day I reunited with Amy. It reminded me of the house I lived in with my family when I was young. Wanting to start anew, the day after Kent disappeared, I called the management company, and a few weeks later, I successfully purchased the house. On a day off, while I was in the garden, I heard a familiar voice. "Sally. There you are, glad to see you're doing well," said the voice as my former in-laws, all three of them, entered the property. "Why are you here?" They seemed taken aback by my coldness, but their presumptuous attitude remained unchanged. "Not a bad house you've got here. We came because we heard you built a house. The shop was closed when we went there." "Where's Kent?" they said, barging through the front door without waiting for an invitation. "Please, stop. Don't come in," I protested. "No, ever heard of cutting your coat according to your cloth? It's a waste for just two people to live here. From today, we'll be living here. If you don't want to live with us, then you should leave." "Oh, but you'll be the one paying. After all, you were poor to begin with, so you can live anywhere, right? We're having a hard time right now. Families should help each other, right?" my former mother-in-law said, patting my shoulder, to which I gave a look of disdain. These people don't understand what they're doing. They kept trying to enter despite my refusal and attempts to stop them. But there isn't a chance in the world I'd let things go their way. "Yes, ex-family. I would have loved to help," I said, just as a melody from hell reached our ears from afar. The sound of police cars. "I've called the police. How dare you enter someone's home like this? It would be terrible if Sally got hurt. Come here. Who are these people?" Amy was shouting from the luxurious staircase. "Yes, this is Amy's house. While it's true I bought a new house nearby, today I was just visiting Amy's house." And as the sirens blared, my former in-laws seemed unable to grasp the situation. "Ex-family? What's that? I'm divorced from Kent, didn't you know? And about that tea shop you were so proud of, it went under because Kent ran off with all the money. Were you unaware of all this? Such a shame you've come all this way. Perhaps, with all these complications, even a college graduate can't keep up?" I said with a laugh, watching the former in-laws turn pale. Ignoring their shock, Amy continued her act, a performance filled with conviction.
"What? The family of Sally's ex-husband? You followed her all the way here? That's scary,"
she exclaimed just as the police burst in.
"Officers! These people seem to be stalking this girl, and they entered our house without permission."
Amy made a scene, shouting with all the windows open. Her voice, along with the sirens, attracted the neighbors. Though they lived in the next town over, being from a family that had done business here for generations, they had many acquaintances around. "Isn't that the son of the Morrison tea shop?" an elderly person remarked, causing everyone to look at the former father-in-law. Confused, the former in-laws were shoved into a police car and taken away. "The police may contact you again for further information," an officer told me, and as I watched the police car carrying the former in-laws drive away, I finally felt a sense of relief wash over me. That night, Amy and I celebrated until the morning. We raised a toast. It all went almost according to plan. I had anticipated that the former in-laws might show up someday. That day I reunited with Amy, we had devised a plan. First off, I wanted to leave my in-laws' house quietly and get Kent to sign the divorce papers. I didn't want any messy disputes that would bind me any further. So, I told Kent that if he didn't agree to separate from his family, we would get a divorce. I made him write the divorce papers, stating that if we weren't living separately by the specified date, I would file them. On the day we decided to separate, I showed Kent a fake set of papers and tore them up. I also intentionally left a reasonable amount in one of the company's bank books in an obvious place, having transferred the rest to my account. I said I didn't need the money, but Amy insisted I should take it. And in a way, his scumbaggery helped the plan. It turns out the woman Kent had deceived, pretending to be single, was a friend of Amy's. Amy's friend thought she was dating a single man, and they had talked about marriage. I didn't claim alimony for his infidelity, but Amy encouraged her deceived friend to demand it. Kent fled when faced with the claim amount. Moreover, that friend turned out to be the daughter of the president of the company where my former sister-in-law worked. Even in a relatively large town, it seems everyone is connected somehow, a typical small-town scenario, I guess. My former sister-in-law, of course, didn't know she was involved with Kent's affair, but suspicions led to an investigation into her conduct. It was discovered she had been coercively inviting younger male employees to dinner and had been engaging in power harassment, leading to her being prompted to resign voluntarily. The father-in-law had been receiving a part of the tea shop's profits as a nominal manager, relying on transfers from the company's account that Kent had run off with. When the transfers from Kent stopped, it led to their current predicament. Afterward, due to the misunderstanding leading to their home invasion, being first-time offenders, and the fact that no one was injured, the three spent about 2 days in detention before being released. However, maintaining the large house they lived in with 5 adults became impossible, and now they apparently reside in a small, run-down apartment, constantly bickering among themselves. Despite all being highly educated, the 65-year-old former father-in-law, the 60-year-old former mother-in-law who had barely worked, and the former sister-in-law who was essentially fired for power harassment, had no significant job prospects. Their overbearing attitudes in the past meant there was no one willing to help them. As for Kent, the fury of the owner, whose daughter he deceived, was tremendous. He was found, put on a fishing boat, and apparently is working off the compensation. Now, I'm living carefree in this small house. There's no more suffocation. I'm not planning on marrying again anytime soon. I hope to enjoy my time here in this house at a leisurely pace with my best friend Amy, who still comes to visit and worry about me. The miserable, frustrating, and hateful times are over. I felt a refreshing breeze brush against my cheek.
I'm here for a visit.
I naturally turned towards the voice and smiled.
My dream was to create a place where a family could smile together. Now, I'm determined to face forward and live without forgetting to smile once again.
Help! Call the police! There's a burglar! Returning home from celebrating my mother's 60th birthday, I discovered that the watch worth $24,000 she had bought for me was missing. I told my husband that someone had broken in and to call the cops. But he said, "Stop. It's definitely in the house." Stop? Definitely in the house? What does that mean? Why so sure? But I've already called the cops, you know? I've called them already.
It must have been that person who liked the watch, right? That's why you don't want me to call the police, huh?
I'm so disappointed. Really disillusioned with you. I can't deal with this anymore. You and your idiot family are gonna see hell. My name is Sophie, I'm 38 years old. I married Ethan after dating for 2 years, just 3 months ago. He's my beloved husband, handsome and respectable. But there's just one thing about him I can't forgive. Well, saying it's about him might not be quite right. Though, without it, I believe we could have been happy. The thing about Ethan that bothers me is...
Ethan, your mom came over again today.
She did?
Well, let her stay comfortably.
My mother-in-law, Ethan's biological mother. An extremely unpleasant presence, but Ethan is overly sweet to his mom. Why do I dislike the mother of the man I love so much? Well, because of that incident. We were living together even before we got married. So, I thought nothing much would change after our marriage, expecting to continue living as we had been. I came over again today. I almost feel nauseous. My mother-in-law saying something like she's visiting her boyfriend's place. After getting married, she comes every Friday to stay over, leaving Sunday afternoon. And we're newlyweds. Because it's lonely being alone. I don't care. But this wasn't the case when we were just dating. She never once came to our place. However, as soon as we got married, she started coming over as if it were the most natural thing. Curious, I asked her about it and got a nonsensical reply. You see, before you were married, you weren't officially family. I thought it'd be bothersome if I, as the boyfriend's mom, imposed myself. But now that you're married, you're technically family, right? So I figured I don't have to hold back anymore. Her response left me dumbfounded. What is she even talking about? I can't understand her logic or common sense. I vent my frustrations to Ethan. True, we're still newlyweds, and I'd like to spend the weekends with just the two of us. He understands and has tried talking to his mom about it. Though, when he says trying, Mom, we're still newlyweds, you know. Having you come over every week is a bit much. Mom, maybe it's better if you head home early today. You're welcome to stay longer if you want. His way of speaking is incredibly roundabout. I don't know if he doesn't want to upset his mother or what, but not being direct just makes me more frustrated listening to it. I should have been the one to firmly say it. But then again, we're still newlyweds, and complaining about my mother-in-law when we're going to have a long relationship ahead, starting it off on a tense note. Despite these thoughts, I'm infuriated that she shamelessly comes to our house every single week. Moreover, she bosses me around, which only makes my anger skyrocket. Hey, Sophie. I'm a guest, you know? Entertain me. After you finish eating, clear the dishes promptly. Or what? Are you planning to make your guest do the housework? What an unreasonable wife. Despite claiming me as family after marrying Ethan, her comments are bizarre. If we're family, the least she could do is clean up after herself. But lately, Ethan seems to be taking the same stance as his irrational mother. Indeed, this is my house, and Mom is a guest. I am building a new household, after all. A husband who doesn't protect his wife from discomfort but agrees with his mother. Then he started saying this. Mom has come all the way here, changing trains multiple times. It must be hard on a woman over 60. Let her rest. I almost retorted, then why not just stop coming to our house every week? But I held back, not wanting to start a conflict. I swallowed my words. That's right. I come all this way to see Ethan, changing trains just to get here. So you should entertain me. If she wants to see Ethan that badly, she should call him to her place. Don't involve me. Such a headache, this mother and son. Lately, I'm in resignation mode. There were days I cried over being newlyweds before. I've complained to Ethan. But Ethan is? Well, Mom does bring various gifts when she comes. So don't be too harsh. Indeed, my mother-in-law always brings gifts when she visits. Hearing just that, one might think, what a conscientious person, so thoughtful. But I believe her true intention is different. The gifts she brings are always Ethan's favorites. And she makes sure to give them directly to him, not through me. Here, I brought this for you. You love these snacks, right? Please eat a lot. She speaks as if I'm not even in her field of vision. And, of course, Ethan is happy to receive his favorite treats. Express gratitude with a beaming smile. Thanks, Mom. I was just wanting to eat this. Your choices are always the best. Ethan beams with joy. My mother-in-law glanced at me and smirked. She knows I dislike it and deliberately irritates me. What is her deal? While I'm irritated by my mother-in-law's actions, Ethan accepts her weekly visits. Deceived by my mother-in-law's strategic behavior, Ethan is pleased, and she's too pleased with herself, knowing exactly what her son likes. Why did I even marry Ethan? Lately, that's all I think about. Despite loving him so much before. Now I can only see him as a mama's boy, which is gross. I'm seriously considering divorce, and soon it's my mother's 60th birthday celebration. A festive occasion, especially for one's own parents. With such a joyous event just around the corner, I can't possibly divorce now. I'm causing worry for many people. Because of that, I'm enduring and tasting the bitterness every day. Amidst this, the reckless behavior of this foolish mother and son accelerated. One day, my mother-in-law came over, as usual.
Sophie, why haven't you brought more beer when it ran out? You're not very considerate. Bring a new one now. And some snacks too.
When did I become her servant? Or a waitress? Sighing, I followed her demands. Then, I heard her excitedly shouting. Curious, I went to the living room with the beer and snacks, only to find, look at this watch, Ethan. Isn't it wonderful? It fits me perfectly. I love it. She was wearing my watch. That watch was very important to me. It was a present from my mother for my 20th birthday. What's more, it cost $24,000. I can't imagine how much my mother must have struggled to save up that money. I was raised in a single-parent home. We weren't wealthy, but I've put you through a lot. I've been saving for this day, my mother said, having saved up for my coming of age. To have such a meaningful item casually worn by my mother-in-law was incredibly upsetting. Moreover, it was taken without my permission from the watch case on the dresser, which was incredibly rude.
Please stop! That's a precious watch my mother gave me.
When I intervened, my mother-in-law freaked out. Huh? I'm wearing it now.
What do you mean stop? Are you trying to restrict my actions?
I couldn't understand why she would say such a thing after taking my property without permission. As I stood dumbfounded, she, seemingly struck by a thought, gleamed at me with a request.
You know, this watch is lovely. It looks expensive.
Give it to me. I had already mentioned it was a precious gift from my mother. Yet, she had the audacity to ask for it, which was beyond brazen.
This is really important to me. I absolutely cannot give it to you.
I firmly refused. Then, like a child throwing a tantrum, she whined.
I want it.
Give it to me. How can she not be embarrassed at her age?
I've told you many times, it's very important to me. This watch costs $24,000. I can't just give it away.
After saying that, her eyes sparkled even more.
$24,000? All the more reason I want it.
I regretted mentioning the price. It was too late for regrets. She refused to take off the watch. This is mine, she declared, refusing to listen.
Hey, Ethan. You know how important this watch has been to me since we were dating, right?
Desperate, I turned to Ethan for help. I expected him to say something like, "But Mom." To my surprise, Ethan came to my rescue, albeit with an unnecessary comment.
Mom, I'll buy you something even better than that watch. So, let's return the watch, okay?
His words irritated me.
Really? Then I don't need this.
Urged by Ethan, she immediately took off the watch.
Make sure to buy me something much better and more expensive.
Okay, Ethan appeased her. The way they both treated my watch as if it was nothing infuriated me. It's such an important watch to me, and it's unforgivable. However, surprisingly, after my mother-in-law left, Ethan apologized about the watch. It seems he knew how much I valued it and intended to make sure it never ended up in his mother's hands. I wish he had stopped her when she tried to wear it. Nonetheless, it's true that I felt a sense of happiness from Ethan's kindness for the first time in a while. Ethan might behave that way towards his mother, but everyone holds their mother dear, after all. Though in the case of his mother, I do think she comes over too much. As irritating as she is, on the days she doesn't come, Ethan is the kind and loving man I fell for. I've started to notice more things that annoy me, but I'll try to accept them gradually. Besides, constantly being irritated isn't good for me. I'll stop getting angry just because our newlywed life is being disturbed. Considering cohabitation in her old age as practice, I decided to compromise. Perhaps because I became more accommodating, my mother-in-law's selfishness only grew worse. Yes, until it escalated into such a major incident. Today is my mother's 60th birthday celebration. I have a younger brother, and his wife is also joining us. When I mentioned it, Ethan said, "Let me celebrate with you too," offering to join the celebration. We decided to go back to my hometown for the weekend, staying overnight on Friday. I was thrilled at the prospect of spending a weekend without my mother-in-law for the first time in a while. Ethan and I met up after work and headed to my parents' house. It felt like we were on a trip, and I was genuinely happy. "It's been a while since we've done something like this," I said to Ethan, and he nodded.
"Sorry, my mom has been so selfish lately."
He surprisingly apologized. Ethan, like me, was raised by a single parent. He feels a strong sense of gratitude towards his mother, which is why he finds it hard to stand up to her. I understand his feelings. I felt guilty for being angry by myself, realizing the conflict he was going through. The conversation flowed easily on the way, and before we knew it, we had arrived in my hometown. My brother, who lives there, came to pick us up, and we went to our family home. It was a joyful reunion with my mother and brother after such a long time. I had forgotten about my mother-in-law for a while and enjoyed the moment. Probably because I had been under a lot of stress usually. I ended up having a great time. After a grand celebration for my mother, it was suddenly time to return. The conversation with Ethan was lively on the train back, and we enjoyed the afterglow of the visit. But when we got home...
"What? You've got to be kidding!"
My watch was missing. I don't wear my watch for personal outings. Since I like to drink, I avoid wearing it to prevent losing or damaging it while intoxicated.
"What happened?"
No signs of a break-in. Just my precious watch is gone.
"My important watch."
Confusion and dismay overwhelmed me. Why was it only my watch that disappeared?
"What's going on? What does this mean?"
I became desperate and started crying uncontrollably.
"Just calm down for now."
Despite the fact that the watch had gone missing while we were away, Ethan seemed oddly calm for some reason. But there was no way I could stay calm in such a situation.
"What are you talking about? Call the police. There's a thief."
I insisted on calling the police. Then, Ethan's expression suddenly changed.
"Stop it. It has to be in the house." "What? It has to be in the house? What does that mean?"
I couldn't believe my ears. Why could he say that with such certainty? As I wondered, he said, "Just wait a bit," and went somewhere to make a phone call. I didn't understand. But, thinking it might just be somewhere, I searched all over the house. Yet, it was nowhere to be found. It really was stolen. As I was getting more depressed, Ethan, who had finished his phone call, came towards me.
"My mom is coming over now."
His mom? Why at a time like this? When I said, "This is hardly the time," Ethan silently looked down. He seemed like he wanted to say something, but what could it be? While pondering and searching for the watch, my mother-in-law arrived shortly.
"Really, why the sudden call?" "I was in the middle of shopping."
In the middle of shopping?
"Sorry, Mom. But as I said over the phone, Sophie's watch is missing. You've been at home all this time, haven't you? I just thought maybe." "Been at home? Why? Wait a minute. You mean to say my mother-in-law has been at home all this time? What does that mean?"
I immediately asked, and my mother-in-law, laughing, answered.
"I stayed over as usual while you two were away."
"What? Stayed over? What does that mean?" As I stood there bewildered, Ethan started to make excuses in a panic.
"Well, if something happened while we were away, it would be trouble, right? What if a thief broke in? So, I gave Mom the keys and she said she wanted to clean the house as a way of thanking us for letting her stay over every week.
What is he talking about? First of all, why didn't he tell me that his mother would be in our house? I was so flustered I couldn't think straight and could only shout, "What is that?" Then, Ethan continued with his excuses.
You were really looking forward to your mom's 60th birthday celebration, right? I didn't want to dampen your spirits by saying something upsetting. And you know, you're not comfortable around my mom, so.
This guy is hopeless, this is going nowhere. Enough already. Whatever. As I muttered that, Ethan kept rambling on as if trying to justify the situation. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had thought too highly of Ethan. I was wrong. I genuinely felt that I could no longer be with Ethan. And as I was utterly disillusioned with Ethan, I directed my anger towards my mother-in-law. After all, she liked my watch. She definitely stole it.
Let's put aside the fact that you were in the house without my permission for now.
When I said this, my mother-in-law responded.
Why should I need your permission to be in Ethan's house?
Are you stupid? I wanted to retort you're the stupid one, but I restrained myself and asked instead.
Where did you put my watch that was here?
To which my mother-in-law replied with feigned innocence. Maybe you lost it somewhere? I mentioned that I don't wear it for personal outings and always keep it here, which made her explode in anger.
If it was so important, you should have kept it with you at all times.
Such a defiant response. I immediately countered.
So, you're admitting to taking my watch without permission?
She fell silent to my question, but after a while, began to rattle off excuses just like Ethan.
Because Ethan didn't buy me the watch. And then you went to your mother's 60th birthday celebration. It made me so mad, so I took it.
Her excuse sounded like a child's rationale for a prank. How old is she mentally, I wondered. Even Ethan seemed upset by her reasoning and challenged her.
Hey, you're saying this is my fault?
As Ethan spoke up, my mother-in-law slammed the table and stood up, directing her anger at him.
Yes. I hated that you went to your wife's parents' place. I don't care if it was her 60th birthday or whatever. You didn't need to go. You're my child, you shouldn't be celebrating your wife's parents.
I felt like she was belittling my mother too and was on the verge of exploding.
Why would you need to steal the watch? The watch disappeared, and you were the first person who came to mind. I didn't give you the keys for this. Give back the watch now.
Ethan was furious before I could say anything. Right, the priority now is the safety of the watch.
Yes, please return the watch immediately.
When I demanded, my mother-in-law became even more stubborn. No way. It's mine now, I won't give it back. Her obstinacy was infuriating.
Is that so? Then, I'll report this as a theft to the police.
At my words, both my mother-in-law and Ethan exclaimed in unison.
The police!
They panicked.
Surely, what Mom did is unforgivable. But there's no need to go that far. We know she's the culprit. If it helps, I can buy you a better watch than that one.
There it was again, Ethan's that watch comment.
Hey, I told you, that watch was a precious gift from my mother, who raised me by herself. Why would you refer to it as that watch?
Ethan was left speechless by my question. Then my mother-in-law started ranting again.
Making such a big deal over a watch to call the police? Since Ethan is offering to buy a new one, just accept it.
Despite mentioning the police, she refused to return it, which made me wonder. Why go to such lengths not to return it?
If you won't give it back, I'll have the police arrest you. What will you do? There's still time.
This was a critical moment for my mother-in-law. Yet, her response was,
No, I won't return it. It's ridiculous to call the police over this. Ethan will just buy a new one, and that should be enough.
I've always thought she was unreasonable, but this confirmed it. As I stood there dumbfounded, Ethan interjected.
Hey, let's all calm down. Mom will return the watch to Sophie, and Sophie won't call the police. I'll buy a new watch, okay?
Everyone's logic seemed flawed. It was all becoming too much to handle.
I won't return it. I absolutely won't give back the watch.
Even now, my mother-in-law insists on not returning it. I can't take this anymore.
I'm seriously going to explain to the police that my watch was stolen by your mother.
Exhausted, I said this, and both of them tried to stop me again.
Stop it, I told you.
They yelled at me, and I replied.
But I've already called the police. What?
Indeed, I had already reported it to the police.
What do you mean?
Both panicked when the doorbell rang. It was the police.
Wait. Why are the police here? When did you call them?
Ignoring the two of them shouting, I let the police in. Suddenly, it got very quiet. Seeing them shrink in front of the police officer, I thought, serves you right. Then, the police began to question them intensely. Seeing the two of them looking so sheepish was pitiful. As expected, my mother-in-law was arrested. Ethan, having lent her the keys, was thoroughly interrogated to determine if he was complicit in the crime. He was ultimately found not guilty but was visibly worn out and had developed gray hairs. Ethan repeatedly apologized and said, "I'm truly sorry, but I couldn't forgive him," and pushed a divorce paper towards him, saying, "Sign this."
What? Why?
Did he really think he did nothing wrong?
Letting your mother use me every week, treating my precious watch as just something, letting your mother into our home while we were away without consulting me, and stubbornly refusing to call the police this time. These are the reasons.
When I explained why I wanted a divorce, he started with his usual excuses.
See, it's that kind of excuse that I can't stand. It was really fun when we were dating, and I loved you. But I've realized that Ethan turns into a worthless mama's boy whenever your mother is involved.
Ethan fell silent when I said this.
Staying with Ethan means I'll always be reminded of your mother, and I don't want that. So let's get divorced.
Ethan simply said I'm sorry and agreed to the divorce. Thus, I was freed from that foolish pair. As for why my mother-in-law stubbornly refused to return the watch, it was because I broke the watch. Apparently, she got carried away, wore it out, got drunk during a meal, and somehow cracked it.
I couldn't return it because I thought you'd ask me to compensate for it. It was worth $24,000, after all, so I got scared.
If she had just returned it quietly, it wouldn't have escalated this much. What a foolish person. However, the police took it as evidence but assured me it would be returned to me. I was relieved. Naturally, I made my mother-in-law compensate for the broken part. As a result, her savings were depleted in one go, and now she's struggling, not knowing what to do with her life after being released. As for Ethan, being seen by coworkers as the police entered our home led to baseless rumors like he got divorced because he was abusive. He got into a police case because of his aggressive attitude. This caused him to develop neurosis and resign. Now, he's busy looking for a new job. Moreover, their relationship worsened significantly due to this incident, and they are almost estranged now. My mother-in-law leads a lonely, frugal life, and Ethan struggles to find work. Both are having a hard time. You might wonder when I called the police. Actually, I did it while Ethan was on the phone with his mother. Unable to stand it any longer, I contacted the nearby police station the moment Ethan left the room. I was told it would take about 30 minutes for them to arrive, which made me feel even more depressed due to the shock of having my watch stolen. But when I realized my mother-in-law was the culprit, I was determined to confront her thoroughly. Surprisingly, they arrived in about 30 minutes. I was warned by the police officer, in case of domestic disputes, if the culprit wields a knife or similar, it could lead to a bloody incident, so try not to provoke them. Reflecting on that advice, I decided to use this experience to grow further as a person. The time I spent with Ethan cannot be brought back. However, it's true that I've learned a lot from this experience. Going forward, I want to use this incident as a lesson and walk towards a bright future, cherishing the precious watch I received from my mother.